Welcome back to the I Empower podcast, season 2, where we hear inspirational stories and then we turn that into art that reminds us to be great. Each week, we dive deep into the story of a special person who discovered their power against all odds. But it doesn't stop there. All of the inspiration is then memorialized into a single unique painting that reminds us to be great. So if you, my friend, are looking to step out of your own way and into your life's full and well-deserved potential, this is the place for you.
How has this experience made you feel about the Amish in general? Do you have resentment towards it? Do you feel it or are you just at a point where you're like, if that's what you want to do?
I don't have resentment. I don't. I have no right to have resentment.
Right.
So, Lizzie, thank you so much for being with me today. I'm incredibly excited to talk to you. I know that there are a lot of people as well on your end that are super interested in hearing your story. So I always like to tell my listeners and viewers where I found you from. I actually found you on Instagram.
Yay!
Yes, your Instagram is doing some crazy things, it's blowing up, and I'm super excited about that for you as well. One of your reels came across my feed, and I see that you are a health and diet coach, which I think is super cool. I know I'm not the healthiest eater. I try. But yeah, I think that's probably what a lot of people have issues with is that. So tell me about yourself. Introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super stoked. When I learned about your podcast, I was like, this is really cool. So I'm excited to be here. So my name's Lizzie Ens, and I'm the owner of Undiet Yourself. That's my health coaching business. And I am former Amish. So I grew up in an Amish community, culture, church until I was 19. And then I left. And now here we are talking about that journey today, which is super exciting because a lot of people are incredibly intrigued by it and it all ties together. So I'm stoked to be here.
Yeah. So I know I think that for some reason, I don't know why so many people are intrigued with the Amish culture, but we're very interested in a lot of the things that you guys, I don't know if you still consider yourself, I don't know how that goes. I'm learning, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my husband actually grew up in Western New York, and there were a lot of Amish that were in his area. And so he has a little bit of he would talk about horse and buggies, which I think is probably your biggest thing that when people think of Amish, they think of the clothing
Yeah.
and the horse and buggy and things like that. So your passion for health and fitness, where did that come from?
You know, I went through a lot of battles myself. Even when I was still Amish, I'm a twin, so from the time we were born until we were in our teens, I was always bigger. So I was never obese, but where that stemmed from and my yo-yo dieting and treating my body just awful, is because I got bullied
Okay.
when I was growing up, and my twin was always smaller. I was overweight but not obese, but because of that, just a general person that wasn't a twin,
Yeah.
they probably would have been fine. But because she
Right.
was always smaller than I was, I got bullied for that. And so that really led into, yo-yo dieting and not eating and overworking my body, and just really treating my body horribly, which made me very sick because I
Right.
went through a phase of being really sick, and I really believe that it stemmed into some of long-term stuff that I'm now still trying to correct. So
Wow.
I believe that my passion for all of this stemmed and started from all the way back then, and I didn't even know it. I was writing my story all the way back then.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. That's probably, we talk about a lot on the podcast of body image, and it's unfortunate that I think statistically they say as young as 8 now that girls start to nitpick and view
Hmm.
themselves, and it's shocking to me that in the culture of I mean, because I guess it's just a global thing, and there's no race, there's no gender, there's no religion that prevents children from being victims of bullying. So that kind of surprises me a little bit, just because when I think of Amish, I think of gentle, and I
Mhm.
don't know if that's a correct word. You're gonna tell me all about this in a minute, but like, yeah. So like, but I love how you took your experience and the things that you battled with as younger, and are you're taking those and using those tools to just do good. And so your goal now is that you have clients that you kind of coach with diet and fitness.
Yes. So my whole thing is diet freedom health coaching. I named my company Undiet Yourself because I was driving the car one day, and as I'm thinking, this was during COVID. I'm thinking about, okay, I'm going to take my business online
Yeah.
because I trained in person for many years, and it was time. Like I just knew it was time, and that was what I was being called to do. We're driving in the car one day, me and the family, and I looked at my husband and I'm like, "What do you think of the name Undiet Yourself?" And he was like, "That's really cool. Like, I
Yeah.
like that." And I immediately talked to my girl who was helping me, like, build my website, kind of built things out. And she was like, "Yep, that's it." Um,
Awesome.
and so that's where it stemmed from. And it really was me reading something and realizing, like, okay, my passion really is helping people like understand like the foundation of nutrition and what's nourishing you and what's healing your body and giving you energy. And so many of us don't know that. Like we
Yeah.
don't get taught those things when we're growing up. And so now we're an adult and we're fighting all the fad diets to try to
Mm.
like lose weight, get smaller,
Yeah.
or have more energy, like whatever it is. And typically they just don't last because it's
Yeah.
too restrictive. And so I realize that there's millions of other women that are going through the exact things that I did. And I want to help them get out of it. So
Yeah.
that's what
Oh
I'm
my
doing.
gosh. I love that. I love that you're like embracing woman power, because in Amish culture, that's kind of opposite of what you're doing right now, right?
Yes. So that's one of my other things that I really focus on is the mindset and how we speak to ourselves. Where I grew up very suppressed as a woman, and it took me years to come out of that.
Yeah.
And I see that in so many other women where, not treating ourselves correctly, not speaking up when we should be speaking up and being our own, power and source. Like we have control and we are able to do that. And whoever said that it's only men that can do that, like whoever made that rule.
Right.
But if I also recognize that if you grew up in that environment where the woman put her head down, she went to work, they had some say in things, but it was very much head down. You don't have a lot of say in things, and you make babies and you cook
Yeah.
food and take care of the house, and that was kind of like your thing.
Yeah.
It takes a while to get yourself out of that, and for some people, it's easier. It depends on your personality.
Yeah.
It also depends on how suppressed you were when you were growing up and how you got treated if you were abused, physically and mentally, and what that looked like when you were growing up.
Right. So you were so I just want to, if you're ready, like let's just jump right into this,
Yeah.
cuz I know that a lot of people are like super curious about, again, the Amish culture in itself, but then you have a lot of followers that are like, I need to know more. So you were born into the Amish community, is that correct?
Yes.
So tell me about that, growing up, because I do have a little bit of knowledge just from my own little research. So I have some questions prepared for you too, but just tell me your story and like how you got to where you are today.
Yes, absolutely. I was born and raised into an Amish family community church. And have 18 siblings. So there's 19 of us, three sets of
Wow.
twins. I'm a twin.
Wow.
So, but here's the thing that a lot of people have to understand. There are different sects of Amish. So they call them orders. You can call them orders or sects, but where some of the misunderstanding is coming in, even over on my Instagram platform, is they're arguing with the fact that these are lies that I'm telling,
Right.
and saying it's not true. And the fact is there's so many different orders that you have to remember that they all have their own set of rules.
Right, because it's
And
kind of
so,
like different denominations of
yes,
Christianity, like, you have Lutheran and Methodist and Baptist and all that, so
Catholic, yeah.
yeah, that makes sense to me that there would be different orders.
Well, there's even different orders of Mormons. Like I know Mormons that
Right.
are super conservative and Mormons that are
Yeah?
more modern. So
Yes.
it's sort of the same thing. Well, it is the same thing.
Yeah.
But I grew up in the church that was called Sports and Trooper Amish, and I always say like that's like the bottom of the totem pole because it's like that's like as like low and conservative as you go
Oh, okay.
with the Amish church.
Yeah.
So where I was at, there was no like indoor plumbing. There was no, you
Wow.
had to go outside to an outhouse to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
There was no running water. We used the pumps, or if they had like a it's called like spring water. And
Mhm.
if they had like a windmill where they could like pump pressure, they
Yeah.
could have some running water, but
R
it's not like we have here now.
right.
And so their way of lighting up their homes was because they don't have electricity, they use kerosene lamps.
Yeah.
Um, and they use wood burning stoves to keep the house warm in the winter and to cook their food on. So it's very, very conservative. Um, and then, there's all these other orders that you just kind of like climb the ladder.
Right.
And then there's like New Order, Old Order, Mennonite, but there's a lot of in between that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. And so growing up in this culture, well, first of all, I'm curious because you're saying that you're getting some feedback on your Instagram about people not agreeing with what you're saying or saying that you're lying. What are some of the things that they're saying that you're lying about? Because when I think of Amish, I do think of no electricity, no plumbing, no, literally,
Hmm.
when you think of old
Yeah.
English, back in the day before all those things were invented, no TV, no radio, no
Yeah.
makeup, no any of that. So are people that just maybe are different orders that don't know they're different orders, or is it just people, keyboard warriors, saying you're lying?
Um, It's actually what I've seen is primarily like other orders that may not
Okay.
understand like the order that I grew up in. And so one was like we weren't allowed to shave. Like we weren't allowed to shave our body. We weren't allowed
Right.
to cut our hair.
Right.
We didn't wear bras. And so those were things that people were saying like you're lying, like we did this. And
Yeah.
there were I also we didn't have social security numbers growing up. And
Right.
like old order, new order, they'll have social security numbers, but we didn't. And so, there's former Amish people from there saying like, that's not true. Um,
And you're
so
like,
it's
do your research.
yeah, yeah. And I'm like, okay, okay.
Okay.
Trying to keep this peaceful.
Yeah, I know
But
it's difficult sometimes.
yeah. And then there's some other people that are just like keyboard warriors and they
Yeah.
just, I don't have space for that, so I just kind of let it ride out.
Right, like, I'm just gonna tell my story as I know it,
Mhm.
and this is it. So,
Yep.
wow, and so since you were a part of the extremely conservative, order, um, you weren't so, like, tell me what it was like growing up as a woman or as a female in this culture, because my understanding is that the woman is very submissive, um, doesn't get to speak a lot. stays at home and cooks, doesn't work, raises children. Like their goal is to be a mother and have children and have many children. So, like, tell me how that was for you growing up. Did you always have this like inside of you, like, this is not really, this doesn't feel right. This is not really what I want to do?
Yeah. Um, I think that fire started to burn in me when I was like 13. I started seeing like the outside world and being curious about it,
Yeah.
but I would never be able to speak on it because if you speak on it to anyone, they is not going to be good.
Yeah.
So you have to just like keep it quiet and to yourself and figure out like if you're going to leave, what is that going to look like? Will that even ever happen? Because I don't know if I have the connections to do that.
Right.
Um, but growing up as an Amish woman, like I don't want to make it sound like we were never able to speak.
Yeah.
Um, but it is definitely very much like you are the homemaker. You take care of the garden and the house. And once you get married, you're having babies. And, there's a lot of miscarriages. And I know they're not allowed to have birth control. Like they're not allowed to
Right.
use birth control, which is why there's a lot of large families because they believe like whatever God is providing them with as far as like as long as they can have children,
Yeah.
they're having children. And so that's just part of like their belief system and their process. But I also do know there's a lot of pain because I know like there's some infertility that happens and if infertility is happening and let's say a couple gets married and they're having infertility issues, the church may actually come talk to them and be like, "Are you guys using birth control?"
Wow.
That's harsh. Like,
Yeah. Well, and personal because, like,
and very
if you want
personal.
to, yeah, like, and if you want to have children, you know, I can speak for myself when I was trying to get pregnant at the age that I am now and not being able to, like, it's very difficult on a woman just in general for to
Yeah.
not be able to conceive or to miscarry. So like I can imagine that having someone on the outside come in and, start asking you questions can be very difficult.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. But that's just sort of like guys that I have brothers, they would get like some jobs here and there helping other farmers, work in furniture shops, that kind of stuff. Um, Girls typically had like if they got older, they had let's say like 16, 17, or 18. Because up until the age of 21, whatever money you earn goes to the parents. And then once you turn 21, you are considered of age. And then whatever money you make goes to you. So
Right.
you're supporting yourself. So you may become like a school teacher and teach at one of their small one-room schoolhouses, or you maybe do like hired maid work, which is, when someone has a baby, they go help out
Yeah.
for like 6 weeks or so. So you may do that, um, but you're not where I'm from. You're not going to like go become a cashier at a grocery store.
Right.
Um, and I think there's a few things that have evolved, but not to the extent of like, hey, we're going to go work at a grocery store or
Right.
anything like that.
Right.
So
So do
when
you
I
guys
was
have
there, we
like
weren't allowed.
yeah, so did I can imagine that that would be so you're working like in the community basically when you do work
Yes,
it's like in the community.
it's
Do you
within the
have
community.
do you have your own currency or are you still using like American dollars to I'm
American
just
dollars.
okay.
Yeah. So I wasn't 21 when I was there, so I obviously like didn't have my own money when I was there. But I do know when they turn 21, they go and open a bank account. And they have what they call like an exemption number,
Mhm.
which I think is like just a different word for a social security number.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, probably. It's just a way of keeping
I,
up. I can
yeah,
imagine, yeah.
yeah. So I think they get that. But I never went through that process, so I don't know 100% how it all works. But they do get a
Right.
bank account and they use regular money.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Not credit cards
And
though. Can't have credit
no,
cards.
right, because that's considered like electronic, which
Yes.
is against the beliefs of the
Yeah.
church.
Yep.
Okay, very
Yep.
interesting. So when you're growing up and you talk about like getting jobs and things like that, is it custom to seek marriage at a young age? Did you go to school? Like some of the things that I
Yeah.
read, schooling stops at a certain age with certain
Mhm.
ones, and
Yeah.
then you're conditioned to be a wife, right?
Yeah. So
Did
you go to school first through 8th grade. You graduate 8th grade. You're typically what is that 15? Something like that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
something
Yep.
I think
15.
just depending on where 13, 14,
Yeah.
but somewhere in that
I was
range.
15. Yeah. I was 15. I remember that now. And so then from 15 up, you don't start dating until you're like 16 and a half, 17.
Okay.
And so from like the time you graduate from 8th grade until then, it's just kind of like an in between, and you're just a homemaker. You work for your parents. And then at 16 and a half or 17, you can start dating. And then it just depends on who you meet and who you decide that you want to marry. If it's a guy that's older, it's typical for guys to not get married until they're 21 because they
Mhm.
need to be able to support, their wife and family when
Right.
they get married. But my oldest sister, she got married at like 18 and a half because she married a guy that was a little bit older, and so he was able to provide, and she got married early. But a lot of women may not get married until they're like 20 or 21, and
Oh,
then
interesting.
21's pretty typical because then they're considered of age.
Right.
But anything before that, like they would still be like working for the parents. But then once they get married, they're not. Like that money, like whatever money they
Yeah.
make, they're it's going to go to the husband
That's
or
so
their household.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
interesting that the women are allowed to work until they become a wife. Like, I don't know, I guess
Yeah,
it's a
and then
little
anything
confusing.
beyond that. Yeah, anything
Yeah.
beyond that, it's like they're not. I mean, they might do like homemaking stuff where they can sell things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. That makes
But
sense.
but not
But
like
not going out and working because you have to take care of the children.
yes. Yep.
So, um, when you're creeping up on the point of knowing that your schooling is ending, like how did that make you feel? Like, because you said at 13 you were already kind of curious and wondering, like, did you feel any certain way, or were you like, okay, I guess this is what I got to do?
Well, I think at 13, I started having sort of like this urge in my heart, like there's more to this world. And I started having a lot of questions about the church and how they were treating members of the church and the families. So I would ask my mom questions. So that would happen.
Yeah.
And she didn't always have an answer for it, or she would brush it off.
Yeah.
So, but fast forward 2 years, like my dad died when I was 15. And so that just threw in like a whole other area and section of like pain and grief and
Yeah.
processing. And so I think that helped me like sort of take a step back and be like, would I really want to do that to my mom? Because
Right.
it put a lot of like pain on the
Yeah.
family. And so I think I sort of like, put it on the shelf and was just like, okay, I don't know where this is going to go. But
Yeah.
then when I was 17, my twin and we actually ran away for 2 days.
Oh, wow.
So my twin and were the first ones ever in our family to run away. And so we planned it together. I was kind of the planner, but she hopped on board and we planned it together. And we left and we were gone for 2 days, and we had cousins that had left like a few years before then, and we got a hold of them, went to their house, and my one of my older brothers, like, he found out where we were staying. So so he called the house, that my cousin's house, and it was back when like home phones were really like that was
Yeah.
the way of communication. And
Yeah.
so he calls the house, and my twin is in the kitchen and I'm in the living room, and she picks up the phone and starts talking. So I pick up the phone and I listened to their whole conversation and didn't say a word. she comes into the living room and she's like, I can't do this to mom. Come pick me up. Like, told my brother that they need to come pick us up.
Yeah.
And I was devastated. I did not want to go back. I was like, I
Oh,
can't. Like, I
wow.
don't want to live this life. I don't want to be there. I was willing to shelve the pain that I knew that my family was going through, knowing the pain that I was in, and I wanted something different.
Right.
But twins are really close typically,
Yeah.
and we have a connection, and I just felt like I needed to follow in her footsteps and go back. But I told her the day after we went back, I said, I can't stay here. Like, I'm not staying. I don't know when I'm leaving again, but I will leave again. And she's like, yeah, I won't stay here either.
Yeah.
But fast forward, a year or a year and a half later, we became members of the church and started dating. And she was in a
Wow.
really serious relationship with this guy that she was going to get married to. And so by the time that I was in a relationship too, and it was long distance. But by the time I like became a church member, I was just sort of like going through the motions. I was
Yeah.
just like, this is not, I'm out of place. This is not where I want to be. I'm causing trouble. I didn't want to follow the rules. And as I became a member of the church, I also got more insight on like how the church was treating people. And I was just like, I don't believe in this.
Yeah.
And their thought process is if you leave the Amish culture, like no matter what, you're going to hell because you left that culture. And so my thought process was literally like, well, if I'm going to go to hell for disobeying their rules, then I'm going to just go to hell driving a car. Like that was literally like
The
I'm
thought
like
process.
I'm just going to go all the way. Like that
Yeah.
thought process, like it blows my mind that I like thought that, but that was my thought process. Like I was just
Yeah.
like I can't do this. And I also didn't believe in the way that they treated people. I was like, I don't believe in a God like that.
Right.
And so um that's when I sort of like made a plan, but I didn't have a solid plan because I was also in a relationship
Yeah.
and I didn't know like what he would do and what was gonna happen there. So he ended up leaving with his sister without telling me that he was leaving.
Like, left
Um,
the Amish culture?
mhm, yes.
Wow, did you guys have that conversation at all in your relationship?
No. No,
What?
so he lived in New York.
Oh my
He lived in New
goodness.
York and we started dating. And so when you date long distance in that culture, where I was from, your way of communication was like maybe you see each other like once or twice a year, but then like the only other way that you communicate with each other is writing letters.
Wow.
And so every other week I would write him a letter, and then every other week he would write me a letter. So it was just like opposites.
Pen
And it's like,
pals.
yeah, like pen pals. Yeah, you become pen pals. So
Yeah.
we would see each other maybe once or twice a year. It was awful, like
Yeah.
terrible. So
But
long,
did you, like, genuinely have feelings for this guy, or was it just kind of because you were in that environment and you knew
I
that you needed.
did, I
Yeah.
did, yeah, like what I knew about
Yeah.
feelings. You know
Right.
what I mean? Like you're like
It's like high
17,
school.
18,
Right,
or
yeah. You're like,
you're
"Oh,
like,
I
I'm
love
gonna marry this
you."
kid. But I
Yeah.
but I mean I never pictured myself staying there and just having kids. That was
Yeah.
the one thing that always stood out to me is like I cannot picture myself doing this.
Yeah.
I literally just never saw it happen. So he ended up leaving with his sister before even telling me. They drove down from New York, and I was actually working as a hired maid at my oldest sister's house because she just had a baby, and it was my turn to deliver a letter to him. So I walked to the mailbox to deliver a letter, and there's a note in there, and he's like, "Hey,
I'm
I left.
out.
Uh, I'm
Oh my
out.
gosh.
Um, if you like my sister and I and her boyfriend left, and if you want to leave, we'll come by tonight and pick you up. But if you don't want to leave, I'll come by sometime and we'll talk about it, you
Yeah.
know.
Oh, well, at least he didn't just, like, disappear on you.
Right, until like 2 months later. But
Oh, no.
anyway,
Oh my
um,
gosh.
but it took me like 2 seconds to just out loud say to myself, "I'm in." Like
Yeah.
I was like, "This is my way out."
This
Like
is your ticket.
this is
Let's
my
do it.
yep, this is my only chance that's gonna be real easy for me to do. And so that's what I decided to do. Like I knew I had like the rest of the day to process it. So
Yeah.
this was noon and I had the rest of the day to process it. So I had to figure out like what am I gonna like I can't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Um and so
Would they try to keep you? Like, if you told them that you were leaving, they would try to, like, keep you?
oh yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
if you tell them that you're leaving, like all hell breaks loose and they do
Oh,
everything that they can to keep you there. And so you just stay quiet.
yeah.
You don't say anything. And so I remember I was really quiet the rest of the
Mhm.
day and my brother-in-law, married to my oldest sister, he was kind of an asshole to me the day before. And he's like
Yeah.
telling me like I'm not listening to what the church is doing. Why aren't you more like these people over here? Like they follow the rules and
Yeah.
just kind of went off on me. And so when I realized that I was leaving that next day and I was like, this is my way out, I became super quiet and
Yeah.
wasn't saying much. And he got worried because he was like, oh, I really like stepped over my line, but he didn't say anything to me.
Yeah.
So I knew, like, a part of me was like, okay, I'm glad this is happening. But I knew if I leave that night, he's going to think that had everything to do with what he said to me. I knew
Yeah.
that, and part of me, like, out of spite was like, "Okay, I'm fine with that." Like, you were out of your I was like, "You were
Yeah.
out of your line speaking to me like you're
Yeah.
not my
I
parent, like,
can
you're"
live with that for the rest of your life.
But, I don't think that he thinks that anymore. I've never spoken to him
Yeah.
since, so I don't know.
Wow. Oh my gosh, and so you, like, packed your bags and, like, snuck out.
I didn't have a bag to pack.
Oh my god, you just left.
So I waited until they went to bed. And so it's like 10 o'clock at night. We get ready to go to bed and I go upstairs and I wait until things get quiet downstairs. And I could have just like pretended like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. Let's just
Yeah.
go downstairs. And but instead of doing that, like I write a little note because I want them to know like this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I did say that I had nothing to do with them. Like I
Okay,
did
yeah.
leave that little note in there. And I just said that this is something that I have to do. This is what I, feel. And I don't remember what else I said. It was
Yeah.
pretty short. But I just had my dress on. I left my covering, back there. And I took like a flashlight and I had $20. I don't remember where I got it, but I had $20 and a couple other like small things. That's it. That's all I had. And so I didn't even take my shoes. I think I left my shoes there too. I can't remember. If I did, I threw them out. I don't remember.
Yeah.
I'm just glad I didn't throw out the dress because it's been really funny like pulling it back out.
Right.
Um, but I climbed up out onto the roof. I was like, I can't go downstairs if they hear me. So I climbed up out on
Mhm.
the roof. Well, when I climbed onto the roof, the dog was underneath on the porch downstairs, and he like starts barking, and
Oh,
I was like,
no.
no.
Shush. Oh
and
my
and
gosh.
my brother-in-law ends up like stepping out and like chasing him away, so he goes down to the barn. I'm like, thanks for helping me out. um so he helped me out in that aspect. But I climbed out onto the roof, and then I probably sat there for like 30 minutes contemplating how I'm gonna jump because I just envisioned like I jump because this is probably like I don't know 12, 15 feet. I don't know how.
Yeah.
It was a pretty big jump. And I just envisioned like I'm gonna like break a bone and then I'm stuck there forever. Like
Oh,
all these
no.
thoughts like
Yeah.
going through my head, and they have, I've talked about this before, but they have a local paper that's like where all the Amish write their stories and stuff, and it's called The Budget. And I just was like, oh my God, I'm gonna like break a leg jumping, and then there's gonna be a story in the budget that I was like running away and I like broke my leg, and they're gonna be like, that's what you get.
Right, we're gonna use her as an example.
Yeah, it's like this is what God does when you try to run away.
Oh
Like
my
they would
gosh.
totally say that.
Yeah.
But my boyfriend at the time was, they were waiting, so I knew that they were up the street waiting, so I finally jumped. Didn't break a bone, and I ran around. I could have ran just straight out onto the road, but I didn't. I ran around all the buildings because I was like, if they hear me jump, they're gonna come out and look, so I'm gonna run
Right.
away as quickly as I can. So I did that and went up, and that was the
That's
end of
it.
running away there.
Oh my gosh. Holy crap. Like, I can imagine that the adrenaline that is like going through and like you said, all the thought processes is like it's scary, I'm sure. Cause you're like, what if I get caught? And then I'm sure there was probably just some fears of the unknown. Like, I'm about to leave everything that I know to
Yep.
go and be who I think I truly am. Wow.
Yeah, it's the reality is mm, every single person does not know what they don't know and does not realize like how much they were sheltered until after they leave.
Yeah.
Because you just don't
Wow.
know, like, you live in this community, you live in this box, you obviously interact some with the outside world because you
Right.
have to, you go to a grocery store, we sold things, to people from the outside, but that was pretty much it, like, you're not exposed, and so
Yeah.
when you start realizing all the things that you were not exposed to, you were like, "Oh my god." Like this is it can go a couple ways. Like you can be like, "All right, I'm going to learn and I'm going to, surround myself with the right people that can teach me these things."
Right.
Or you become really scared and you just kind of like, "Oh, I don't," you close off and
Yeah.
you for the longest time for myself, I wouldn't allow people to know how little I knew. So let's say, we didn't learn a lot of vocabulary in school. We learned English,
Yeah.
but not like extensively. It was like just enough to get by. And so if people would say certain things with specific words in that I didn't know what they were talking about, I would just pretend that I knew what
Yeah.
they were talking about because I was ashamed of letting them know that I didn't know those things
Right.
and
Is
I
this
didn't want people
because
to know.
do Amish have a separate language?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking. It's not like an English language, it's your own
Mm-mm. We no, it's
language.
called Pennsylvania Dutch. So it's a
Okay.
Dutch language, but it's different than the Netherlands. So like Netherlands is I would call it like more modern Dutch, whereas like
Yeah.
where we are from, it's like it's really slangy and slobby in a way, and you're just kind of like now when I hear it, I'm like, oh my God. But
Yeah.
so
And
I can't.
so they don't they just teach you English that they kind of want you to know to function, to be able to
Well, I
work and
mean,
do
they
things like
have,
that, or
yeah, they have their English workbooks that you have to go through when you're in school. You have to pass tests and stuff like that. But it's not proper like pronunciation or announcing things or
yeah.
I had a lady reach out to me on Instagram and be like, "You don't announce these things very well, blah blah blah." And I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay."
Well, cuz English isn't my first language, so
I'm like, "You should have heard me when I first left."
Right, yeah. I think I'm doing a really good job, guys.
And also, I just want to say this, like, there's a lot of other people that did not grow up the way that I grew up
Right.
that some people would be like, okay, that's not proper English. What's proper English? Like, if you ask my husband, he'd
Yeah.
be like, most people
Mm,
don't speak proper English.
no, no, we don't. Especially, and then you like go southern, like where I am, and some of the things, like What's y'all is one of
Yep.
them. I'm just trying to think. Oh, my husband, again, because he's from New York, likes to pick on me because I say, "Can you cut on the light?" And he's like, "You can't cut on something, Jessica. It's turn off the light." So, like, that's not proper English. That's not a proper, you know, if I were to write that down in a like in an English paper, they would probably score it bad. But yeah, like so yeah, what is proper
Yes.
English?
Yeah. What is who made proper English? Who put it
Yeah,
in a
who
box? We don't want to.
exactly.
We also don't want to all just be the same, right? Like
Yeah.
it. What makes the world beautiful is everybody being their own self and their own piece, and owning that. Like
Yes.
owning who you are and not allowing others to dictate and tell you who you should be, how you speak, how you dress, those kinds of things.
I love that. And I think that's like such a genuine thing for you to say that because you've experienced what it's like to be, suppressed and not and being taught and made to be a certain way. So like I
Hmm.
love that you said that cuz that's just like coming from somebody like that has lived that and been through that and realizes like makes us who I almost kind of want to say like privileged in that aspect
Hmm.
of being able to be our own selves and think our own thoughts and things like that. Like it really makes you want to take a step back and be like, oh, okay, yeah,
I
that's
had a
awesome.
conversation with my husband a few weeks ago, and we were talking about freedom, and I said I really truly don't think that. I'm not trying to get political or anything like
I
that.
know
But I
it's
said I
okay.
really truly don't think that we understand true freedom here.
No,
I just really don't think we do. And we don't respect it and we don't, appreciate it.
yeah,
So,
yeah, because you just have to like again like putting yourself. I mean, this is an American culture that we're talking
mhm.
about. This is now, day and age, today, there are cultures that raise their women and raise their men to think and feel and do this. And so like you said, like and I also think that we take a lot of the things that we have and the freedoms that we do have for granted.
Oh
And
yeah.
it really makes you want to just be like, okay, I need to reevaluate like my thought process because I thought I had it bad, but I don't.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, wow. And so when you left, like I did have like did your division of the Amish, did you guys not and I'm probably gonna say this wrong, Rumspringa? Did you guys do that?
No.
That's probably a
No.
question you get a lot.
Yeah, I do get that a lot, and that's usually like what a lot of people know the
Yeah.
Amish bar is like, all right, well, didn't you have a choice when you were in
Yeah.
Rumspringa?
Yeah.
But we weren't allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Because where I'm from, that was a way of like, all right, well, you're gonna, probably experience some things that you would love to continue doing in your life. And so that's not part of our sect. Like
Right.
weren't allowed to do that. Did we do things we weren't allowed to? 100%. Like
Yeah. Like what kid
we
doesn't?
like exactly like we became, unfortunately, very good liars
Yeah.
because you had to hide so many things. And so you weren't allowed to have cameras, you weren't allowed to have music, you weren't allowed to drink, you weren't allowed to smoke. Like the guy smoked, I also don't know where this came from. The guy smoked pipe or cigars, but no cigarettes. So cigarettes were
Interesting.
prohibited, but women would never have been allowed to do that.
Hmm.
So getting together on a Sunday for church or just like visiting someone at their home or whatever, the guys are smoking pipe or cigars. Like my dad didn't, and my
Yeah.
brothers rarely ever did. Um, but a lot of people did, but they didn't weren't allowed to have cigarettes. But
Huh.
some kids did this when they were in the age of dating, and some didn't. It just depended on like what you got exposed to. So when I was 16, I got exposed to music that my brothers exposed me to, and so I started listening to music, but we would have to hide it.
Yeah.
So, parents can get very sneaky and good at like looking into hiding places, but we would like the best hiding place that we had was in the attic. and like under the flooring. So we
Oh,
would like
wow.
hide our radios down there and our cameras. Um, and then so I got introduced to music when I was 16, and then probably 17, I don't know, like I got introduced to alcohol, like beer, like they would drink beer, so I got introduced to beer.
Yeah.
And so we just, had fun with it.
Yeah. So, did that when you say introduced to music, like, did you guys not sing in church or anything like that? Like, you didn't have
So,
or
yes, so like, but not it was hymns. So they have their
okay.
own German hymn books, and they have their own hymns that they sing, and it's
Yeah.
all German. But
Ah,
music, like let's say music on a headset, or like back then, like cassette players were really big,
right.
and then like the CDs came out. So those were things that we did, or we would just have like a little handheld radio and just like, go to stations and bring those in. So that's prohibited because it's music from the outside,
Yeah.
and it gets run by batteries. So we
I
have to
know.
use batteries for it.
I
Yeah.
I honestly like I love music. So me like
Mhm.
thinking of going that long of my life and then all of a sudden hearing like this song with the melodies and the beats and the bass, like I can imagine that was kind of euphoric for you. Like you're like, "Oh
Yep.
my gosh, this is amazing."
Yeah,
On top of the
absolutely.
fact that you knew that you were doing something wrong, so there was that adrenaline rush
Yep,
too added to it.
100%.
That's incredible. Oh my gosh. And
Yeah.
so I feel like I have a million. I could probably talk to you for like 2 hours and like we still probably wouldn't cover everything, but oh my gosh. And so do you still talk to your family? Because you hear a lot about shunning and like when you leave, you don't get an opportunity to come back, or how does that work?
Yes, I still talk to my family. I go when I was living in Ohio, I would go see my mom several times a year, but now that I don't live in Ohio, I see her once a year when I go back
Wow.
there. Took her a few years to, accept it every time we would go back. I think the first time I went back was like maybe 3 months after I had left.
Yeah.
And it probably for the first few years or so, she every time we would go back, she would try to persuade me to come
Oh.
back home.
Oh, so
Like
you
I
could have
like,
come back home.
yeah, yeah, you can go back. Um,
Wow.
but because I was a church member, I am shunned by the church.
Ah.
So if you leave before you're a church member, you're not going to get shunned because you weren't within the
Yes,
church.
that's one of the things that I did read on was once you become a member of the church, things get a lot more
Hmm.
difficult, I guess,
Yep.
for you.
They have a lot more control over you.
Yeah.
So they're going to be, once you become a member of the church, they're going to be looking at more strictly about how you dress. Are you following the rules? If you're not following the rules, they're going to, punish you for it.
Interesting.
And then if it's bad enough, they'll shun you. Like even if you're there and you do some things that are not within the rules and the order of the church and you're a member, they may shun you for 2 weeks and like
Mm,
excommunicate you from the church for 2 weeks and then bring you back in if you make promises to like not do it again.
wow. So very like reprimanding, like like I'm gonna spank you because you did this
Yes.
bad thing, and you got to promise not to ever do it again.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they do, so like for me when I left because I was a member of the church, I had to give them the like they wanted me to say like, hey, it's okay for you guys to put me, in shunning. Like they call it the bond. So they would want my okay. And so they found out where I was staying, what house I was staying in after I left, and a few weeks after I left, the preachers of the church came to the house
What?
and we're sitting outside for probably like an hour or two, like waiting for me to come outside. And the lady of the house that I was staying at, she would just tell me like what they were doing. They're just sitting there, and she went out and talked to them, and she told them I'm not coming out because I said I'm not going out there and talking to them. And
Yeah.
she's like, that's fine, you don't have to. And so finally they just left. And so I never gave them the okay to put me in the bond, like the shunning. And so
Hmm.
what the church has to do is they have to come together as a church and do a vote and come into agreement that everybody, agrees to shun me
Wow.
and excommunicate me. So they didn't get my okay, they just got the ruling
The
of the church
church.
to do
Huh.
it. Because I was like, I don't know where I got this from, but I was like, I'm not allowing them to have this control over me. This is the
Right.
one thing that I'm not going to give them.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. That you're like, "No, I have my own power."
I didn't know it back then.
Yeah. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. So, oh, see, I always thought that like once you were out, like they wouldn't even talk to you. So is that just according to like where you're from or is it a family decision to not talk to
So
you?
it can definitely be a family decision. So some parents are a lot more harsh with their kids leaving, and so they tell their kids like, "Listen, you cannot come home unless you come home to stay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you are not welcome on our land. You cannot walk on our land. You cannot come see us." So some families are pretty tough when it comes to
Um,
that, and thankfully my mom, my dad's not there. I really don't know
mhm.
what I don't think he would do that because he was a really, kind person.
Gentle, yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't think that he would do that. But my mom, after a few years and she realized like, hey, like so I have three other siblings that left
Oh
and
wow. I was gonna ask you that.
yeah, so they left after I did. I had an older brother that left like 3 months before I did, and then like a year and a half later, he went back. So he's back
Okay.
in the Amish community. But the other siblings that left, they, I always say like I feel like it took a couple years, and then finally she came around, and I one time I waited like 6 months to go see her, and when I went to see her, like the look on her face was just like, oh my gosh, she came to see me, and she
Oh.
told me that time she was like, "Don't you ever wait that long to come see me again."
Ah, that's gonna make me cry.
Right. Because
Oh my
here's what she
goodness.
said, like, I've had a few, like, brother-in-laws, like, tell me, like, I would go see like, my twin got married 6 months after I left, and I wasn't at her wedding, and that was a decision I had to make when I decided that I was leaving. It's like,
Yeah.
do I stay 6 more months, go to her wedding, and then leave, or do I leave knowing that I wouldn't go to her wedding? And
Yeah.
I just knew that I had to leave then, like, it was just a decision that I had to make.
Yeah.
I would go like visit her after she was married. I would go visit her and she was really nice. But the last time that I went to see them, the the husband was like, "You can't come here anymore. I don't want my kids to
Oh.
see you." And so he was just like really mean with his approach. And my
Yeah.
sister was just like this is literally what would happen. Like he would be saying those things to me, and my sister, who's my twin, is sitting there
Yeah.
like rocking her little baby with her head down, and I could see like she's like almost crying.
Oh.
And my mom found out what he did, and she was so incredibly scared that that I would not come see her again because of what he said to me. And
Yeah.
she was upset with him. She wasn't upset
Yeah.
with me or anything like that. She was just like, I don't want anybody to do anything to prevent you guys from coming to see me because no matter what, you guys are still my kids. And they don't use the word love. They
Yeah.
don't. They never said I love you. We never had hugs. We never had kisses. Like there's no affection
Wow.
like that. So we didn't grow up with that. And so for her to say that was her way of saying like I love you. You will
Yeah.
always be my child, and I want you to come see me.
I love that. Like, that is amazing because I can imagine as a mother not
Mhm.
being able to see your child again. And then, of course, like, as a child, not being able to see my mother. So I love that. Like, that's incredible.
Yeah, and I did
Oh my
I
gosh.
understand. I knew that there was going to be pain for my mom. For them, like, for someone leaving, it's like someone died, like, they literally,
Yeah.
like, feel like someone died, and I knew that there's pain because there's a child that left, and for the longest time, she felt like she did something wrong, and I had to tell
Yeah.
her over and over, like, "Had nothing to do with you, you raised us really well, like, you didn't
Yeah.
do anything wrong," but, I have a child now,
Yeah.
and I
That's
think about the
awesome.
fact, like, what would I do if my kid would be like, "Peace out. I don't
Yeah.
wanna, be with you anymore." And I put myself in her shoes to feel, like, the pain that she felt and realize, like, I've never blamed my family for any of their feelings. There's a lot of people that leave that, like, they sort of despise their family because they can't understand why their family can't accept them for who they are.
Yeah.
And, I've walked a few girls through this process and just made them realize, like, listen, here's the thing. You can choose to hang on to that and hope that your family accepts you for who you are, or you can choose to create a new family over here with people that are accepting you and loving you and inviting you into their home. That's one thing. Two, you don't get to not allow them to have their feelings
Right.
because they know that life. You know that life, you know this life, and you chose to leave it. They didn't.
Yeah.
They did not tell you to leave. You chose to leave. You get to have your feelings. That's okay. Like, you have to process that and learn from it and grow from it and make a whole new life over here. But you do not get to not allow them to have their feelings
Yeah.
because that's all they know. You have the upper hand because you have two ways, two, what's the word? Perspectives. You have a
Yes.
perspective of growing up Amish and being with your family, and then you have this perspective over here of the modern world and what it's like out here.
Right.
So, which one do you want?
Ah, and like that was inside of you, obviously, probably from the beginning, that you knew that you wanted more, that there was something inside of you that was not okay with this. Huh. Oh my goodness. I do want to. So I love that you're still communicating with your mom and that you still see your siblings. Um, how has this experience made you feel about the Amish in general? Do you have like resentment towards it? Do you feel it like, or are you just at a point where you're like, if that's what you want to do, go ahead, or, do you, I don't know. I can imagine that you probably dealt with a lot of emotions throughout the years, probably resentment and anger and things like that. So how do you feel now? Like, where's your stance now?
I don't have resentment. I don't. I have no right to have resentment.
Right.
I have a lot of gratitude for the things that I learned and how
Yes.
I grew up. I would never change a thing about that. It's made me who I am. And so having resentment would only hold me back from stepping into my power and becoming the person that I need to become to help others become the people that they need to become. So if I'm
Yes.
sitting here having resentment towards them, sure, there's a lot of things that go on that shouldn't go on. There's a lot of things that happen that shouldn't happen, but so are there things outside of the culture,
Yeah.
outside of the community. It's not just them. We all know that. The difference is it's much easier for them to hide it because they are their own thing and they want to take care of it within the church, whether it's right or not,
Yeah.
and they don't want the outside, law to come in and, you know, mess with their business. So they're
Yeah.
gonna, try to take care of whatever it is within, if there's, abuse or molesting or anything like
Right.
that happening, they're gonna try and take care of that within the church. However, there are some things that do need, like, justice needs to happen from the outside. And there's been some really brave people that have stepped up that had abusers when they were little and they have left, and years later, like, they stepped up and they exposed their abusers and they got justice. That's
Awesome.
a good thing. That's a
Yeah.
very good thing. So I don't believe that those things need to be buried. I don't think that they need to be left alone. I do think that they need to be brought to light and taken care of. But do I have resentment? No. No, I
I
don't.
love that. I love that because, like you said, that's
if you hold that in, it's not affecting them, it's affecting you. So,
You can't
ah,
allow that to have power over you. You just can't. Because if you like and I'm even going to speak to people that didn't grow up Amish and maybe grew up in a culture that was very much religious in a way that was controlling and
yeah.
suppressing. And you, because I've had a lot of women reach out to me and tell me they had similar experiences and they had to
Oh,
get
yeah.
away. And so, there's work that has to be done. You don't always know how to get out of that mindset
Right.
and have the courage to step out because it can seem very scary, or maybe you have never been exposed to the tools to help you do that. But the
Yeah.
number one thing that you don't want to do is allow that to have power over you.
Ah, amazing advice. So amazing. Oh my gosh, like I said, I could talk to you forever. I know that there's like a million questions, and you have such an incredible story. So I want to highlight the fact that you you are now a business owner, you run your own business, you're helping people live better lives. You're married, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And you have a
One.
child? One
One.
child. Ah, and so
Yes.
you are living the life that you wanted to have. And I just want to say, "Holy shit, like, that's amazing." So
Thank you.
amazing. Yeah, I do have one question that I like to ask all of my guests. So if you don't
Mhm.
mind, we'll jump right into that. Um, we like to talk about stepping into our own power and not thinking of that as a bad thing. I know when you think of power, and I'm sure I could even say that in your experience, the powerful men in your community were probably very intimidating, and you might have felt a certain way about it. So, like, we're trying to flip that word on its head with the podcast. How would you think of, or how would you describe describe the power that you have and you try to step into every day?
The power that I have
Yes.
is,
So I'm so ready for this one.
for me, it's allowing myself to learn more about myself on a daily basis and being willing to grow. So, one of the top things that I've experienced is with all hardships that happen in my life, every single one of those become a learning experience of something of that hardship is going to teach me something that I can use in my life to help myself and to help other people.
Ah,
And so stepping into that power and recognizing every time something happens, I've had back surgery before. Um, and that was in the first year of being a personal trainer and training clients. And initially it was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with
yeah.
me and how does this look? Like the first thought, like when I cared more about what people thought about me,
Right.
the first thought was like, how does this look for me as a trainer?
Right.
Does this make me weak? And after going through a lot of like mental work with that part, I realized, you know what, it has nothing to do with that. I need to look at this and look at, what do I need to learn from this? How is this going to make me better? And how is this going to help me help other people? And
Ah,
ever since that, every single thing that comes my way that I'm like, this is not ideal. This is not like what I would love to be going through right now.
yeah.
I need to learn from this and I need
Ah,
to make it my story and in my journey, because when I got pregnant with our kiddo, it was like the biggest shock of my life.
yeah.
I was like, I'm not ready.
I
I
don't wanna
didn't
do
feel
it.
I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I bawled my eyes out,
Yeah.
and it took me a while, but I learned so much about myself in that journey. Wouldn't change a thing.
Oh my gosh. I could
So,
totally relate to that.
mm, yep.
Ah, it just makes you realize too, though, that that you can still continue to be as great as you were before, if not even greater now, because you are a mom and you're doing all these things and you're raising a child and just, oh my gosh. Like, again, I'm so honored to talk to you. Like, you have an incredible story, and I want to thank you endlessly on behalf of our team and every single person who heard your story and connected with it. After the podcast, I will head straight to my easel and create a piece of art that represents what I personally felt and saw from your incredible story of transformation. If anyone is interested in seeing that process, you can follow us on Instagram. I will have all that down below for you guys, as well as Lizzie's information so that you can connect with her, follow in her Instagram, as well as her website. So if you're interested in, just completely changing your lifestyle and getting fit and healthy, I will link that as well. But thank you, Lizzie, so
Thank
much.
you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, it's been amazing. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I want to thank my guests again for sharing their incredible story of transformation with us. I'm going to link their social medias below so that you can give them a follow. And of course, if you guys felt personally connected to the story and you would like to support the podcast by purchasing one of the limited edition prints that goes along with it, you can do so at my new website. It is iampower.club. And of course, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at iampowerclub. And lastly, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel so that you don't miss next week's episode of I Am Power. We will see you then.